rhetoric of Irish politics is weighted very heavily towards the idea of equality, perhaps in a vague way and without a certainty as to what is meant by that, but it is there nonetheless. It fits in with the very particular sense of community and solidarity which defines Irish people. Sprid on mehel, you might call it. We see it often at budget time. Politicians from all persuasion, and in particular in government, are at pains to tell us that they are about protecting the most vulnerable and the least well-off in society. The reality is, of course, the complete opposite. This government has hit the unemployed, single parents, the poor, the disabled, the unwell, those with special needs and more, while those at the very top, the high-net individuals and those at the top of public service have not been asked to shoulder their fair weight. It has been shown that the budgets of the Fine Gael and Labour governments have disproportionately hit those on low incomes. It is simply lip service, no more, no less. This legislation is a fantastic opportunity to change that. It will introduce for the first time equality impact assessments on a statutory basis. That state bodies will be required to take on board the impact their decisions on those who could be discriminated against, marginalised communities and so on. That governments will be forced to take into consideration the impact that their budgets and their financial decisions will have on the most vulnerable, or equality proofing in effect. This is not a new concept. It has been tried and put into effect in many places, and of course in the north of Ireland. The equality duty is founded in Section 75 of the Northern Ireland Act 1998. This requires public bodies such as assembly departments and other agencies to promote equality of opportunity. A public body could no longer simply say that they have not discriminated against someone. They would now have to actively promote equality and then actually prove that they are doing just that and must fulfil their commitment to equality in public. There are those who would argue that this will be complex and cause delay. The reality, however, is very much the opposite. This will force the relevant state bodies and government departments to outline how their decisions are quality-proofed and to take this into account in making decisions, and would have to factor in longer-term planning in all their decision-making. I believe that this process could lead to a whole new way of planning and creating policies in state bodies and government departments. Planning in a way that promotes equality, but also prudence, sustainability and long-term thinking. This legislation will be enshrining good practice. So it is clear that the legislation is an excellent piece of work, legislatively sound and well thought through, and Deputy McLellan and his team deserve significant credit. I will take this opportunity to note a few particular points in relation to some of the new categories proposed to be inserted in the Equal Status Act, all of which I wholeheartedly agree with. I come from a constituency which contains several rural areas as well as a number of larger towns, but in recent years I have myself noticed a considerable shift in terms of services from rural communities and a serious erosion in the quality of life. The closure of Garda stations, local post offices and transport systems, alongside the shutting down of rural schools, is tearing the hearts out of rural areas. Cuts in the provision of health services and hospitals or family resource centres, the lack of childcare, have accelerated this decline. Along with high unemployment in rural areas, this is leading to people leaving the countryside to go into the cities. The government have pursued policies in rural areas which are not even remotely equality-proofed. There is hardly even the sense that rural areas deserve equality in terms of the services that they are provided with. That needs to change. Rural areas with the huge potential which exists in agri-food and other areas, such as renewable energy, could be a key driver of our economic recovery. However, that will simply not happen unless there are sustainable communities, and sustainable communities have at their root decent provision of services, and we are going to continue to see a decline in rural communities unless the government ensures that rural communities get the services they should be justly entitled to. This bill can help in that regard. I also think that the inclusion of the ground of trade union membership is vitally important, and anyone connected with the trade union movement will recognise the importance of this provision. I myself was a shop steward in my workplace over many years, And I am acutely aware of the fact that many employers will be reluctant to employ trade union members and activists, and indeed can often dismiss employees who are trade unionists for that reason, though they will be given another reason for the dismissal. However, it is important also that people recognise that discrimination does not only work in terms of negative treatment, but also more favourable treatment being shown to others. And this is a particular issue in terms of workers' rights, because very often we see the stick of mistreatment or dismissal accompanied by the carrot of various inducements. For example, in terms of a wage increase or a promotion being offered, but with an implied suggestion that union membership might not be helpful in obtaining that. It is my view that trade union membership would be added to the 6 grounds of discrimination and could give a legal mechanism for challenging this sort of behaviour. And it is apt that we are bringing this legislation forward while the Irish Congress of Trade Unions participates in its biennial conference. I would in particular appeal to the Labour Party deputies to consider the value of this bill in ensuring fair treatment for workers. Tá sé fearr tábhachtach I mbliana, céad bliana ón stal cailúil I mala átha clia, go ndéana mísh cosant ar cearta ibrithe. Ní saoirse go saoirse lucht ibre. Likewise, the Irish language community is a community which has been consistently, persistently and badly discriminated against over many years. Worse still is that there are those who would paint them as an elite, but they should stop complaining while the government breaches and disregards their rights. The reality is somewhat different. And Commissioner Changa has regularly highlighted in his annual reports the flagrant breaches of the Official Languages Act and the discrimination against Irish speakers in terms of accessing services. In one shocking example of discrimination, a driver who was stopped by the guards in relation to a road traffic matter found themselves arrested and escorted in handcuffs to a guard station and was detained until a guard was found who could deal with him through Irish. The Commissioner's report stated, "The person detained in the case was not involved in an accident, nor were there any allegations made concerning speeding or driving under the influence of alcohol." This is scandalous. However, there are many other examples. Many state agencies are in breach of the Act, as was the Department of Social Protection. The Commissioner, Sean O'Corran, is doing an excellent job. However, his thanks is to be ignored by the Government and the complaints disregarded. It is the Government who are responsible for pursuing these matters, with those departments and bodies who are in breach of the law. This is disgraceful discrimination. This bill could rectify that, and to discriminate against Irish speakers would be contrary to the Equal Status Act, as it should be. Tá sé fearr tábhachtach go mbeidh cearta gaeilgeoirí daingean agus go mbeidís in ann úsáid a bhaint ag seirbhíse mar aon leo siúd nach leabhar an Gaeilge. Is cearta déine iad cearta teanga. In summing up, I wish to note that private members' time is often acrimonious and heated as we debate the matters of the day and hold the Government to account, and that's as it should be. However, it is also a key opportunity to bring forward legislation which we think is necessary, useful and valuable. This is a piece of legislation we can all agree with, certainly in terms of its objectives and likely in terms of its provisions too. Amendments to the bill will be welcome to improve it. However, that can all be done at committee stage, and there is no real reason to oppose its passage to committee stage where it can be taken. So I would urge members on all sides of the House tonight to please support this important piece of legislation. Ní mór don rialtas tacu leis an rasúra nuair atá píosa reachtaíochta úsáideach agus fionntach os cór antí. Fianna Fáil talk about constructive opposition as they oppose a property tax they came up with and condemn cuts the same as those they brought in, and bring forward pre-budget submissions which contain gaps a train might fit through. That's not constructive opposition. We are bringing forward here a piece of legislation which could greatly contribute to the budgeting and management of state bodies and could help ensure that we do in fact protect our most vulnerable and go beyond the rhetoric. That's constructive opposition. Please support this bill.